Yes, so I'm Carl Bradel.
And I'm Carlos Quintero, and I have the pleasure to work with him. So we created this concept almost 10 years ago, no? Right? We wanted to create a brand that was modern. We wanted to celebrate modern perfumery. And you know that modern perfumery started when noses or the creators of perfumes started mixing synthetics with naturals. That started around the 1882, when they created this molecule called coumarin in Puget Royal in France. And for the first time, perfumers had the ingredients to create abstraction, to really create artistic perfumes. Before that, they only had natural ingredients to work with, and they were just recreating nature. With synthetics, you could create sparkling fragrances, transparencies, you can create abstraction. It's not anymore the smell of rose, but it's more the smell of rose in space.
So, and then with the concept of nomenclature, we wanted to highlight these molecules in each fragrance in this particular line. And each fragrance has an overdose of that particular molecule that changed perfume history. So we created 10 fragrances altogether, but here right now we have 4 that highlight the molecule. And we use an overdose of that particular molecule along with natural also. So it's not just synthetic.
Basically, nomenclature celebrates modern perfumery, how we know it now and how it's more magical, more sparkling.
We also wanted to give more awareness to molecules because a lot of brands, they say it's all natural and it's not true.
No.
So this is the real truth.
Right.
There is molecules in every fragrance, and we really wanted to showcase that in this line. So nomenclature is a Latin term, and it comes from giving something a name.
Yeah, the action of
naming something. And the idea was to, with these molecules, they're kind of like body skin scents, and you can give them your own name. So that's kind of like the idea behind nomenclature. It's the beginning of a name. It's actually, the name Adret means dapper in German. It's like a term my grandmother used to use a lot. It's when you go to church or when you dress up, you're dapper. And in German it means Adret. So it's a very clean, like dress up smell. It smells a little bit like fresh laundry or crisp linen or freshly ironed shirts. That is my favorite in this collection. And then
I do have many favorites. I wear most Orbital. I think it's the easiest to wear, and it's based on this molecule called Super, which is like a very large molecule, and your nose tends to say it's too much, and then it forgets about it, and then half an hour later it comes back. So you have whiffs of the perfume combo that come and go. And we name it Long O, Chiso, which I think it means a new way of thinking or a new philosophy. And what we wanted to do with this was to create a new green fragrance, a different one, a new way of seeing a green fragrance. And it's wonderful during summers. We call it Psycho because the main molecule is coumarin. Coumarin was created in the 1882.
It was created in 1860 and first used in 1882 in Houbignan.
Yes, so this molecule is essentially the beginning of modern perfumery, and it's very funny because it used to be a poison. Coumarin is this kind of ingredient that exists in almonds too, and it used to be poisonous if you eat it in large quantities. That's why we call it psychoumarin, but at the same time that darkness of the psychopath, the killer, the danger, the obscure. And this perfume smells of hay, dry hay.
It's dry hay, it has incense, it has saffron, like a big dose of saffron in there.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's one of the heavier fragrances in the line, so it's not everybody's cup of tea. It's big
Yes.
in the US, so we do sell a lot of this. It's a very dense, heavy, saffrony,
Dense, heavy, but still transparent.
but still there's a little bit of transparency.
Yeah, which is very hard to
It's very special.
achieve that in perfumery.
Yes.
And the other one,
Ivory is another one that's kind of like more of a gourmand fragrance, but it's very fresh, transparent. It has a brown sugar accord with carrot seed, and it has definitely like a bergamot freshness at the beginning. It's another one that's kind of like a very trendy gourmand, but fresh still.
yeah.
So
We're talking about trends, gourmands, the trendiest fragrances right now in the market. If you,
In the US.
not to mention any brands, you have Diptyque doing a whole collection about coffee fragrances right now in the market. One of the best sellers is, my God, Maison, Baccarat Rouge, which is another gourmand. So the hottest fragrances right now, what everyone is looking for is gourmands. But at the same time, you don't want to go around smelling like cake or coffee or smelling like a muffin or something that you eat. So Pink Ivory, even though it's a gourmand, it's a fresh gourmand. It's very easy to wear, it's transparent, and it has a very good performance.
one of my favorites too. Actually.
Yes, actually, every day to wear.
Yeah, it's amazing. Modern eclectics collection, I love Minted, which is a perfect summer scent. It's kind of like a little bit of a play on Adret, but it has the mint freshness. For the summer, it's a perfect fragrance, and you can actually layer them as well together. So those are my two go-to fragrances. I like them all though. But these are my two.
Wood dew is the name is wood dew, and dew is the drops of water in the morning over wood. So it's a wet wood. So it has that wood dry feeling, but at the same time the liquid of water.
Well, my background is mostly perfume. I was born this, like growing up, this passion for fragrance. I was briefly in Germany, I grew up in Germany. In Munich I worked for a bank, and my lunch breaks I spent in perfumery across the street. So, and then I moved to New York in 1992, and I briefly worked in fashion. And then in 1995 I started the shop, latest uses, and that's my background.
In my case, it came later. I was born in Puerto Rico, which is a Caribbean island. I lived close to the beach, so I didn't have time for perfumes. We have all the tropical flowers and the beach smell and the sea spray. But then I moved to Italy. I'm a graphic designer. I moved to Italy to study fashion, and I got a job, a part-time job at an agency doing advertising and packaging design for perfumes. I work with Ferragamo, I work with Romeo Gigli, Cavalli, Roberto Cavalli. We did all the packaging and the bottle design. And then when I moved to New York, I met him actually at the store at Aedes de Venustas. I told him, like, I work in packaging. I've done this for so many years, but I don't know much about scents or anything. He said, well, this is the perfect, it's the match in heaven. He does the perfumes, I do the packaging. And that's how it all started, actually.
As we said before, like he's taking care of the packaging.
They might be editing, so you can
Yeah.
say it all over again.
Yeah, so he's in charge of packaging, design, production of the bottles, and I'm in charge of dealing with the noses and creating the fragrances with humor. Creative direction is much more.
Yeah, but let me say something. This is a very small orchestra. We are very few of us. We're actually in the studio, and us, we're 4 people. So we take care of everything. I'm taking care mostly of production and packaging in our studio in Bushwick in Brooklyn, New York. And everything is handmade, everything is hand packaged, from samples to bottles, and everything is hand packaged by a very small team. And then he takes care more of the creative part, creating the fragrances, talking to the noses, sourcing ingredients if we have to. He also takes care of the final approval of everything, curates the whole look. I design, but you know, when you're a designer, you need somebody else to guide you, a creative director. And that's what you do mostly. I mean, I do many options of bottles, of labels, or boxes, and he says, I like this one, I don't like this one. But it's a very tight operation. Very few people.
It's the true niche because everything is handmade. Like we have our own people, like filling, packing. It's not manufactured in a big.
At the beginning of niche perfumery, all fragrances were rare, hard to find. They were handmade. There was no marketing. There was no advertising. There was no celebrities endorsing. That was in the 90s, actually, 80s and 90s. But right now, there's two different kind of niche perfumery. There's the true niche, and this is the way we do things. Small, tiny, handmade. Artisanal. And there's a mass niche, which is the big companies that have bought these brands and now they are mass brands. But this is something we're going to talk about maybe later. Can you explain what is true niche, what is mass niche, and a little bit of the history of niche perfumery? Maybe you can talk about that, like you opened in 1995.
We opened this shop in 1995, and that was basically just passion project. It was because fragrance was always my life, without knowing that the term niche didn't exist.
Yeah.
In perfumery it didn't exist. So it was innocent that we started to collect different brands from around the world. We started bringing in SHOP from Australia when it was called EMICE. It was still so it was a very small batch. We worked always with the owners of the shops.
Hold on one second, let me clarify this. When he says we, he's talking about Robert Gessner,
yes,
and him, Carl Bravos, the partners of founders of Ay
yes. Then I discovered a brand called Artisan Parfumeur in the 90s that nobody knew, and then Diptyque used to hang out with the owners, the founders of Diptyque back then in Paris. That was kind of underground label, so nobody really knew these things. Aredo, so when we started the store in 95, and then we got all this press and publicity and a lot of model and fashion industry, they started shopping in our store. After we got a write-up in Vogue, we had Naomi Campbell come to the store, and so it kind of exploded into a more broader, we got a lot of press, so all these brands became more known, and we kind of, the rest is history, so it developed into something much bigger in terms of the niche brands. It took on this department stores.
There were a tiny store in the West Village, and Vogue suddenly is making an interview of them. New York Times has an article, a full-page article about this tiny perfumery store in the West Village, and that's how niche kind of exploded. So what happened there when you get all these fashion brands or all these fashion magazines and newspapers talking about these brands? It exploded. That was also the beginning of the internet too. They started their e-commerce too in the store, and they got so much attention. Like brand Diptyque, like he said, Diptyque was a tiny company. They were hanging out in cafes in Paris, and then they get the attention of the big brands, the big companies, and they started buying these companies little by little, these brands little by little. So from true niche, so those brands that were handmade and they were little operations with very few employees and factories, they became corporate, those big brands. And there are very few brands right now like us that stay really small, and those are the ones that we call now true niche. The rest is mass niche.
Basically actually go to the perfume houses, and they also look at the history of the molecules. So each century or each decade has a molecule that's kind of highlighting that decade.
Yes.
For example, in the 80s it was a molecule called cologne, which was in the sonic molecule. We used that to actually basically each fragrance has a decade.
There's a lot of research behind this.
There's a lot of research behind, so we actually talk also to the perfume houses like Firmenich, and they come up also with the molecules that they show us. Some of them are captive, which are exclusive to the perfume houses, and then we actually build the fragrance around that.
Like I said, there's a lot of research behind molecules, and there's these huge perfume companies that have put millions of dollars behind these molecules, and some of them are so exclusive, they're patented, and they're called captives because they've been held very tightly by these companies, and these patents last for 10 years.
Yes.
So what we did in this case is we did two things. We contacted the companies, we smelled what captives they had or what molecules they had. We also went through history and seen what molecules actually changed perfumery, because we've been using molecules for over 100 years already. So some molecules actually change the way perfumers do fragrances for many years. For example, you mentioned cologne, no? Cologne was a smell of the 80s. All the perfumes in the 80s had a little bit of cologne. Isoe Super is the molecule of the 90s and early 2000s. Most fragrances have a little bit of Isoe Super. In this case, we're doing an overdose. What else? Helvetolite. Helvetolite is a beautiful musk. Musk, the natural musk, became illegal because it's very cruel to harvest musk from the seabed. You have to kill the animal. So musk became the smells of the 90s, 2000 when it became illegal. So synthetic musk are a must right now in all fragrances. So in this case, we worked in reverse in this collection. We identified the molecule first. We talked to the noses, the perfumer. We want to create a perfume with Helvetolite, this musk, or with Isoe Super, and we work in reverse. The molecule is the start of the fragrance, and then we added other ingredients to support it.
Yeah, mainly researching what we're gonna use as the next molecule. We sit together, we brainstorm, and then we actually involve the perfumer as well. So it's kind of like definitely a collaboration with the perfumer, with the nose.
Yeah, this is the way actually in detail of how we work. We identify the molecules and the trend together, and then we decide if this is we want to create a fragrance. You know, what is the mood of the fragrance in that sense together.
Yes.
But he is the fragrance designer. He's the one that is the creative director of the fragrance. He decides the notes and the mood, and then we go to a perfumer and he speaks with the perfumer and he directs the perfumer, which is the nose. They call them noses. Basically, he has the final say on the fragrance.
Yeah, but you do.
You do. This is kind of a controversial theme. When we introduce these fragrances, the Modern Eclectic collection in Italy, some critics says, why Gen Zs, they're so young, they don't know what they want, their brains are not developed, which is not true. And we kind of had an argument about that. We wanted to create modern eclectics. You know, the word eclectics means mixing styles. Mixing different periods, different tastes, different things into one thing to create something new. So the generation, the Gen Zers, are the generation, the most nostalgic generation somehow, the most accepting. You see these kids with nail polish. You see these kids wearing skirts with an 80s shirt, with 90s hair, and they listen to classic music or to punk rock from the 70s and 80s. So they're mixing everything together. All different styles, and they're creating new things. So that was the whole idea behind this, create something eclectic, weird, beautiful at the same time, and easy to wear.
It's a very young smelling line. It's very fresh, it's very transparent.
You know what is
easygoing.
The weird thing is that it doesn't look modern. It's a green bottle with a brass cap, and then we print in an old style letterpress the labels, because that's how the generation is looking backwards in order to create something new forward.
Really just these mood boards. So we create mood boards for the perfumers, so we don't focus on the molecules in this line. It is part of it, but it's not the story. So basically we create mood boards like we do with the other line that I have, the Ideas Divinuses line. We create a mood board and present it to the perfumer with style, with images, with colors, and that's the direction and the modern eclectics line.
Also, we studied the trends. We knew it was going to be a collection, so we knew that we wanted musk, skin scent, we wanted a fresh one, we wanted a transparent one. The things that we wanted for a complete collection. And also Carl has been in perfume retail. He has a store in New York for almost 30 years. So he's been selling perfumes, many brands for 30 years. So he knows, I think you know pretty well what the client wants, what the customer wants, what are the trends in perfumery. So he identified the trends, what we wanted to have in that collection, and he created mood boards. Like he said, images, photos, colors, ingredients, and that's what we give to the perfumers. In this case, most of these fragrances were created by Jerome Pinet, which is pretty well known for many Byredo fragrances, and one of them is done by Frank Vogel, right? Mm-hmm. What is that?
Frank Vogel, he's a perfumer. He did Neo Rose, and then he did most of the molecule collection.
Right. But
And
he's famous for what?
For Le Labo Santal 33, I think he did.
Santal
So
33,
he's
yes.
like a very highly regarded perfumer.
Just to put in reference, who are these noses that created the fragrances? These are the top perfumers right now in the perfume game, to say that. Very competitive, very hard to have access to them, but thank God Carl and Aires de Venustas and the history that they were actually the first one that opened a niche perfumery store in the world. So he has access to all these amazing noses. We're very lucky to have them create this for us.
I think it's transparent, it's easy, it's fresh. Definitely also my favorite.
Yeah.
But I think it's Adred. It's my gut feeling.
It's so easy to wear, it's transparent, but at the same time it's a skin fragrance. It's not overwhelming, it's modest but beautiful. The silage, it has a beautiful silage without being overbearing. It's a statement, but a very beautiful, polite statement.
The bamboo forest, and we went to some incense manufacturing companies in Kyoto where we're working with. For my other brand, for Aedes, temples, it's a big inspiration for us.
So fashion,
and
fashion is so important.
I'm very impressed. I'm very impressed with Japan. Beautiful, beautiful country.
Oh no, we have so many ideas and we're gonna create so many other fragrances, but like he said, the onsen culture of Hakone, the food, the colors in Tokyo is just the energy and the fashion and the individuality. Everyone has their own style. There's no uniformity. That's something that probably the world is been changing, and Tokyo has been changing in that sense too, in the sense of fashion. Even though the stores are telling you how to dress, everyone looks different. Everyone has an individual look, different way of wearing the same things, but it looks different.
Only in Tokyo I've seen that.
Only in Tokyo.
Only in Japan, yeah. You don't see that in New York.
You don't see it in Paris, you don't see it in Moscow, you don't see it in New York, where people are more like copycats. Tokyo is impressive. Another thing I wanted to mention was about New York. At the beginning of the dawn of niche perfumery, we're talking about the 90s, 95, is where fashion became mainstream, where we had the top models, where people started looking at what to wear or what to wear as a perfume too. So it was exciting years. 95 on, it was the beginning of niche perfumery, but also it was the beginning of niche perfumery as a fashion statement. It was exciting years, very fun to be in New York during those years. He was partying all the time. He was partying all the time. Those years, the West Village, the Meatpacking District, you had access to all the best clubs and to all the best restaurants. You and Robert, you would go to any club and the doors were open and you were going out every night. Another thing I want to mention that we're very inspired to keep continuing doing this brand in a small scale and by hand, handmade, is because Japan has such a long ancient tradition of artisanal work. This appreciation for artisanal and small batches, small operations, and we're really inspired to keep doing things the way we do for the Japanese market.
Well, we are happy that we are here in Japan, and we are very proud to be here at No Shop presenting our line.
Yes.
And we hope you love our fragrances, and I think you will. And also, like, if you give it a try, a dread, you can layer with any of the fragrances. Also, like, we do like to layer some of the fragrances as well. We would love to come back to Japan. We are very proud and very thankful to be here. Thank you.
We want to say thank you. We want to say thank you to No Shop that allows us to come here and present our fragrances and to introduce this brand to the Japanese people. They are very transparent, very beautiful fragrances. I'm sure that we're gonna be here many times introducing new fragrances as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.